Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 1,000 Movies Before You Die. We're doing a new segment here on 1,000 Movies Before You Die. It's called the Noir Bar, and the bar is open. Come on in. This is not a bar where everybody knows your name. This is a bar where nobody cares about your name, nobody cares about you. They only care about the wallet you're carrying and how big your wad is. Come on in. The drinks are warm, the babes are hot, but their hearts are cold here at the Noir Bar. Join us as we discuss our new segment, the Noir Bar, here on 1,000 Movies Before You Die. Hey guys, welcome back to 1,000 Movies Before You Die, and we are here at the Noir Bar, and the bar is open. This is our new segment where we're going to be talking about film noirs, in particular some lesser known film noirs. We're going to be mixing up some crazy cocktails, some wonderful concoctions where the murder is the booze. So some of our concoctions are going to be virgin. We're going to have some virgin cocktails, right? Something like Sweet Smell of Success, where there really isn't a murder, but to me, it's definitely a noir. And you're going to see that the definition of a drink in this bar is pretty loose. And the drink is the metaphor for our film noirs. You get it? Just follow along here. The drinks, the film noir, and the booze is the murder. And that's where I'm going. All right. So we're going to be covering some incredible things, some not so incredible things. We're going to be drinking some awesome drinks. Like I said, virgin cocktails without booze. We're drinking some near noirs, right? Like near beers. So these would be something like, let's say, Mildred Pierce, which back then was called, A Woman's Picture. Joan Crawford in it. The femme fatale is her daughter, who's a real nasty piece of work. But it's a film noir, all right? It may not, it has a murder, it may be a woman's picture, what they called it back then, but yeah, that's a film noir. More near noir would be something like My Favorite Brunette with Bob Hope, which is a comedy that has a lot of noir elements. I think that's a class, much more of a classic near noir. Then you have your standard noirs like Double Indemnity, Key Largo, things like that. And then you've got your 100 proof, straight up, nasty, noirs where you take that noir and you're like, whoa, as it goes down. And that's something like, say, Kiss Me Deadly. I mean, we've got a woman tortured to death, I think within the first 10 minutes, and it's basically on screen. I mean, we can hear her screaming as she's tortured to death. That one goes down hard. That one's definitely 100 proof. So yes, we'll be mixing up some delicious things like that on this channel. But actually, all those movies I just mentioned, we won't actually be covering because the point of the channel is to cover some lesser known noirs. I mean, think of our noir bar as a dingy bar. It's down the stairs. It's hard to notice, and we're basically going to see if we can get some some dupes to come down here. Maybe a swell who's got a big wallet. And we're going to try and coax that dude into our bar here and see what nastiness we can foist on our unsuspecting patrons of the Noir Bar. So yeah, some of the things that we'll be covering are lesser known noirs, like I said. What I like to call lesser known gold label, right? So this would be something like, let's say, the 3D Inferno with Robert Ryan. A lot of people haven't heard of that. Fantastic film, right? And it's set out in the desert. You've got something like Brighton Rock, 1948. It's a British film noir with Richard Attenborough. Again, lesser known but great film noir. Something like covering big names in film noir, but some lesser known projects, like Humphrey Bogart, for example, Deadline USA, which is a film about uh, a, a newspaper that Humphrey Bogart's trying to save, but there's murder in it. There's things in it that definitely give it a noir flavor. And it's definitely lesser known, and it's by a superstar. Bogart, superstar director like Alfred Hitchcock, covering something like um, Marnie, for example. Marnie's a lesser known Hitchcock film. I think it's fantastic with Tippi Hedren and Sean Connery. That's a great one. Also, lesser known, we've got let's say something like Compulsion. Orson Welles is similar to Rope, sort of covers, Alfred Hitchcock's Rope covers the same sort of, I think it covers the same crime, which is two, I think it might be brothers in Compulsion, but it's, best friends in Rope where they murder somebody, basically a friend of theirs, just because they can. So Compulsion, a great lesser known film by Orson Welles, right? You've got lesser known remakes like M, 1951 M, not 1931. I like 1931 M, but 1951 M is sort of a guilty pleasure of mine. I actually have more fun with that one than I do with the 1931 one. Oh, I get it. 1931 one, that's a serious, that's like a film school, university film class movie that you watch, German Expressionism, Peter Lorre, Fritz Lang, 1931 M, but 1951 M, man, that's just a fun, fun film. I could watch that again and again. Fantastic. We'll cover things like, noir. Really, is it really a noir? Something like Psycho, right? Psycho is, it's not lesser known, but it's definitely a lesser known film noir. That's a horror movie. But a big chunk of that film, the beginning of the film, is a film noir. And what's awesome about Psycho is it morphs into a horror movie as it starts as a film noir. Now, again, some of those movies are too well known. Something like these are examples of things we'll be covering. Don't necessarily hold us to covering that. This is the Noir Bar. Just because the bottles are advertised back here, it doesn't mean there's any booze in there, right? And some of those are just filled with water and some food coloring. you know, we've got some limited offerings here at the Noir Bar, so don't get fooled by that bait and switch of some of those movies I just mentioned. We may not necessarily be covering them. However, Deadline USA, you might see that one pretty soon. You have to come back to more to the Noir Bar. You might see that one. So yeah, that's what we're doing here on the Noir Bar. This segment that I'm very excited about, as you can see. I'm even dressed for the Noir Bar. I hope to be dressing up all the time for the Noir Bar. You can't show up at the Noir Bar. You can't show up at the Noir Bar not dressed for the Noir Bar. You might get a fistful of fist. What? A face full of face. What? I mean, a face full of fist. You know what I mean. You might just walk out with a black eye. All right. So we get a little sidetracked there, like deer in headlights situation. All right, let's get back to the track here. And we're going to be seeing a lot of that at Film Noir, at the Noir Bar. I mean, there's it's booze flowing. You can't hold us to polishedness. It's not going to happen. One thing that we do have to talk about is the definition of film noir, because at the Noir Bar, we got a strict bouncer. And that bouncer is not going to let everybody in. And I'm screwing up my analogy here. We got a strict bartender, and he ain't going to serve any kind of drink. If you ask for it, it's got to be a noir. And our definition of noir is pretty tight. It has to have a femme fatale. It has to have a murder. It has to have none of those things. Forget that. Ditch all of that. The definition of film noir, as far as I'm concerned, if it feels like a noir, if it looks like a noir, if it sounds like a noir, if it tastes like a noir, it's a noir. You can go on YouTube and you can literally spend days listening to people babble on about their definition of film noir. Here's why that's wrong-headed. Okay. Film noir, unlike neo-noir, does not actually have a definition that is anything other than somebody showing up way after the fact and slapping a label on a movie that, they had nothing to do with. You know, they really were not in the mindset in any way of the people making the film. And I'll tell you this, a lot of those famous old films that are film noirs were not made as film noirs, right? They were made as crime films. They were made as crime dramas of heist movies, or it was after the fact that the label film noir was slapped on those movies. And that was a man named Nino Frank, and he was a Frenchman, and he wrote in the mid 1940s in France. And it was the French who noticed this movement in the United States, which really wasn't even a movement, right? These are labels that were slapped on sort of after the fact. The people making these films, the Hitchcocks and the Wilders and all that, they were not making consciously film noirs, right? This is something that came along after, basically French people watched these films and said, wow, it's really cool. They called them black film, which, man, that's a cool label. If you think about a black and white film, the white is nothing. The white is just the screen, right? If the screen was pink, it would be black and pink movie. What's being projected is blackness, right? It is a black film. And that's perfect metaphor for these movies, right? It is just pure. Now I know some of them are in color, Technicolor, but just bear with me here. I mean, I just love that, right? So the French come along and they call them black films and or film noir, and then that concept goes back to Hollywood, and it's really sort of neo noirs that fit a lot of the tight definitions of film noir, which is what's really cool about neo noirs. These are filmmakers who watched these old movies, who understood the French label that came afterwards, and then said, I'm going to consciously make a film noir. And therefore, movies like Chinatown, they followed that. There's a femme fatale. The main character doesn't even know what the heck's going on. And they fit that definition, you know, and a lot of films, neo-noirs, that you wouldn't think are neo-noirs, that you might think are science fiction films, like Blade Runner. Blade Runner is a neo-noir. Blade Runner has a cop who doesn't really know what's going on. Forces are blowing around. There's Rachel, who's a femme fatale. There's other Chris, who's kind of a femme fatale in there a little bit. You've got your antagonist, Roy, and you've got the big corporation, Tyrell. It's a perfect, almost by the numbers film noir. The Big Lebowski is a perfect film noir. People think it's a comedy. It is a film noir. Coen Brothers love film noir. They have made a lot of conscious film noirs. That doesn't apply to the older filmmakers, the filmmakers from, in the 40s and 50s. They were making crime pictures that later were defined as film noirs. My point with all this babble, which I hope you fast forwarded through, and if you didn't, well, sorry. You're at the Noir Bar. You just sat beside a drunk and listened to a babble for a few minutes. Get used to it. The point of all this is, for this segment, a film noir is whatever the hell we want it to be. Uh, Anyone who's like, well, hey, that's not a film noir because of this. Okay, great. Then in your mind, it wasn't a film noir. Did you enjoy consuming it? Did it have a little bit of a as you swallowed it? Then it was a film noir. Did you take it and like it? It was a film noir. So tight definitions, let's face it, the internet or the YouTube, it's just somebody who listened to somebody else's opinion of what a film noir is and is regurgitating that, and that's great for your film class essay. But for the real world, where we're really just trying to get some fantastic movies, in front of the eyeballs of people who would never have thought to watch these awesome films, I don't think it's helpful to be worrying about definitions, because if you're like, hey, Sweet Smell of Success, that's not a film noir. Well, don't worry, it's not going to be covered on this channel anyway because it's too much of a big name. But if it were, who cares if somebody watches that? My little blurb on it, if I did it, hypothetical in another universe, watched it, went and watched the movie, loved the movie, and it got them into older movies. Well, you're going to show up and go, yeah, that wasn't a film noir. So, and then that person's going to, oh, wow, okay, well, I didn't like it then. Like, come on, it's silly. If you're really into definitions, okay, I'll give you Eddie Muller's definition. I wrote it down here, so I'll read it to you. Eddie Muller is the czar of noir. He wrote, Dark City, which is a great book on film noir, really great, except he spoils pretty much every movie he talks about. So there's so many that you can't really remember. But other than that, it is one of the best. So he really knows what he's talking about. The Film Noir Foundation has restored tons of film noirs. So lots of props to that guy. So his definition is as follows. Film noir is unheralded virtue versus unmitigated vice, whiskey neat and hearts of ice, soft look and a hard place, the end of your rope and a wall at your back. That's film noir, according to Eddie Muller. Like, there's no definition, nothing in there, right? Like, that's just loose BS. But that's perfect because that's what it is. It's a feeling, it's a mood, it's a vibe. If you really want to really nail it down, at most it's a mise en scène, right? It's just the feeling of the film, and that's my definition. If you don't like it, write it in the comments. Give me your definition. But for the purpose of this channel, we're going to go with the loosest definition possible so we can talk about as many potential films as we want. Yes, of course, we're not going to be talking about, full-on comedies or westerns or whatever. But if they fit into the noir genre, we'll be giving them a chat. So that is my little blurb on our new segment, the Noir Bar. And the Noir Bar is open. And the first movie we're going to be covering is Deadline USA, a Humphrey Bogart film that is really not well known at all. I've been all over YouTube looking for, Bogart top tens, and it's not in any of those. And then there's like lesser known, top five lesser known. It's none of those. I just watched. It's a fun, great film with a great message. So join us for that film. You're gonna take it and you're gonna like it when you come back here to the Noir Bar. You get busy dying. You get busy watching. There's too many little blurbs here. I can't get them all straight, but that's because I've imbibed too much at the Noir Bar. Get busy watching or get busy dying.